I'm ready.
Roll call.
Festerson.
Here.
Mr. President.
Here. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing today for our invocation by Council Member Pete Festerson. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just say two things today. First of all, I would like to recognize the community of Beauregard, Alabama. As you probably all know, they've had a devastating tornado in the last few days here, something that Omahas can relate to. But this is the worst tornado in terms of fatalities in quite some time in this country. 23 fatalities, 7 members of one family have perished. So I think it's important for us to share our condolences with them and to let them know that our thoughts and prayers are with them and their community. And then secondly, as it pertains to this meeting, I think this will be a relatively short meeting with a number of public hearings, but next week will not be short. As you know, we have 3 ordinances on the agenda for next week dealing with rental registries and inspections and substandard housing in the community. And I know we have a lot of stakeholders that are interested in the outcome of those ordinances. So we encourage them to be here and to provide input to us on those issues that day. That's a very important issue, one that we feel urgency about, but want to make sure that we get right. So we value that input and hope to see folks here next week and probably have a long meeting next week. But I think it's fair to say that we all recognize that change is needed and that change is coming on that. Thank you.
An affidavit of publication is on file for the pre-council and city council meeting, and a current copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted in a white binder on the east wall of the legislative chambers.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of the Omaha City Council. The council does thank you all for being here today. As a courtesy to those in attendance, though, we would ask you to turn off or mute any of your electronic devices. Madam Clerk.
Items 6 to 9 relate to the same project and can be considered together for Copper Creek, located southeast of 168th Street, Military Road. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 6, an ordinance to rezone this property from AG District to DR District. Item 7, an ordinance to rezone this property from AG District to R5 District. Item 8, a resolution to approve the final plat for Copper Creek. Item 9, a resolution to approve the Copper Creek subdivision agreement.
Public hearing on agenda items numbers 6 through 9 are today. Proponents, please.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the council, Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the applicant. With me today also is Kyle Bowl of E&A Consulting, the consulting engineers on this particular project. This is the final plat of a phase development. This is phase 1. It's 92 single-family lots and 7 outlots. It's a total of 293 lots in all phases. There's 3 phases. This comes to you with favorable recommendations from the department as well as the planning board, and it's consistent with the preliminary plat, so I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Second. Moved and seconded to approve items 6 through 9. There are no further lights. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 6 through 9 are approved, 7-0. Items 10 to 13 relate to the same project, and some of the items can be considered together for property located at 5003 Dodge Street, 106 South 50th Street. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend denial. B is communications in opposition. C is documentation received from the attorney for the applicant. Item 10, a resolution to approve the development agreement with Bucks, Inc. for these properties. Item 11, an ordinance to rezone these properties from R3 District and GC District to GC District. Item 12, an ordinance to amend the boundaries of the ACI2 overlay district to incorporate these properties into that district. Item 13, an ordinance to approve an amendment to the future land use element of the city's master plan from low-density residential to office commercial for the property located at 106 South 50th Street and to change the boundary of the Dodge Street and Saddle Creek Road mixed-use area.
Public hearing on agenda items numbers 10 through 13 have been continued. The public hearing is today. Proponents, please.
Thank you, Council Member. My name is Ryan Glenn on behalf of the applicant Bucks Inc. Hush Blackwell, 13330 California Street, Suite 200, Omaha, Nebraska. I'm here today on behalf of Bucks as well as Steve Buchanan, the owner of Bucks Inc. is here today as well, and a couple of the neighbors from the nearby Dundee community who would also like to speak to the council as proponents later today. I'd like to begin with just a brief historical overview for the council's benefit. This property is unique to Bucks, and the reason it's unique is because this was the first property that Steve Buchanan purchased, to what ultimately led to him owning over 35 service stations in the Omaha metro community, creating countless jobs and tax revenue for the city of Omaha, as you are well aware. While you often recognize Buc-ee's as large convenience store centers, this, as I said, is unique. It's much smaller, and it is more about serving the Dundee community through the automobile repair services and car wash that is offered to its nearby residents. These services are the primary reason why the rezoning application was made to be general commercial, so that those automobile repair services may remain. As you know, general commercial was essentially the only option for Bucks in order to keep the public access off of Dodge Street as it has been grandfathered in. Let's take a moment to further address why Bucks has sought to rezone the property. The Buc-ee's property at 50th and Dodge is divided into two separate parcels. The parcel abutting Dodge Street is Zone GC and contains the main service station building, automobile repair, and car wash. The parcel to the south contains the half-circle driveway that provides easier ingress and egress to the driveway back onto 49th. It is zoned residential. The south parcel also contains a retaining wall that was required to be built back at the time that Bucks acquired the residential home that used to sit on the south parcel, who the neighbor immediately to the south will tell you today was in dire disrepair at the time that Bucks acquired it. Ultimately, that home was acquired from the neighbor in an arm's-length transaction and removed from that parcel. Since the car wash was built, customers have consistently been damaging their vehicles to attempt to get into the car wash. They have run into the building, as well as consistently driven over the sod in an effort to easier get back onto 49th. As a result of that, Bucks has been required to replace the sod over 20 times, which ultimately led to the decision to expand the driveway on the parcel. And admittedly, as Steve Buchanan has mentioned to the planning board, he did that upon some poor advice received from his contractor without a permit, and has accepted full responsibility for that action and apologized for that instance. In order to help alleviate the problem that was created by pouring the driveway without a permit, Bucks ultimately decided to address some of the neighboring concerns that were brought up at two separate town hall meetings that were offered at Bucks' offering. And that resolution is before you today as item number 10 on your agenda, and that is in the form of the development agreement. Let's talk about that development agreement and what it ultimately does. It ties Bucks' hands in perpetuity and future landowners. And how it does that is that it restricts the construction on those two parcels taken together so that the major Bucks convenience center that you see throughout the Omaha Metro will not happen on that parcel. Bucks understands, and Steve Buchanan understands, that he is restricting his ability to develop that parcel in the future if he chose to, which ultimately, again, he doesn't want to, because this property is sentimental in the fact that it was his very first station and he wants to keep it that small, quaint service center for the Dundee community. That development agreement, we have gone back and forth with the city throughout the last several weeks, which is the reason for the delay until the public hearing for today, as you know. We are grateful that Mayor Stothert has reviewed the agreement and has approved it to be submitted before you today for approval. We think that that development agreement rebuilds the trust in the Dundee community so that they can rest assured that the service station will remain as it sits today, with the exception of the site plan that was submitted as exhibits. And the first is the development plan that was identified as Exhibit B to the development agreement that is before you today for approval. And what that site plan does is shows that the future for that south parcel is merely to improve the landscaping and the appearance for the nearby neighbors. And so there's proposals making, the proposal has been to install landscaping both on the interior and exterior of a newly constructed fence, not the existing fence that you see there today, but once the weather eventually warms up, a new fence will be installed and landscaping as proposed here. In addition to the landscaping proposal, Bucks is in the process of working with the design board in order to show what he does intend to do with that property, and that is only to reface the existing structure to better assimilate with the historical nature of the Dundee community and go back to the 1930s or 40s appearance of the old-time service station. The proposal before you today with respect to the rezoning of the property and the ACI overlay, thank you, is also solving one other issue. That the concern that has also been raised is that this general commercial rezoning will encroach into residential neighborhood. Again, this is an isolated instant where it is solving a problem in a practical manner by guaranteeing that no further expansion of that parcel into the nearby Dundee neighborhood will result. And as you can see in one of the exhibits that we submitted before you, this is not a, there we go. This is not an isolated instance where you see general commercial next to residential zoned lots in the Dodge Street area surrounding the 50th and Dodge location. All of the red identified on this map, as you know, shows general commercial, and there are several instances in which it is directly adjacent to a residentially zoned lot. And as a result, we do not feel that we are doing anything that hasn't already been done in this neighborhood. And the fact of the matter is that if this does not go forward with approval today, the result will be that that lot will still remain as it is, meaning a residential home will not go back on that parcel. We are asking today for the council's support on our request to not only approve the development agreement that is identified as agenda item number 10, but also to rezone the property in order to achieve a practical solution to a problem that, albeit was spurred by the installment of a concrete driveway without a permit, which is acknowledged. But ultimately, this does achieve a solution for not only Bucks, but also the nearby Dundee community to achieve trust that their beloved service station will remain as is. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard?
Hello. I'm David Shoemaker, and I live at 108 South 50th Street, and I'm just to the south side of the Buchanan gas station, and I've been a neighbor there for 17 years, and all the things that Bucky has done have been improvements, in my opinion, and I live right next door, so they affect me more than anyone else, and I have no objection to the rezoning, And he's been a good neighbor to me, and we enjoy having the convenience of the gas station next door. And it is unique. It's old-fashioned. You can't find a gas station like that anymore. Most of the other ones, you got to pay for your air and all that kind of stuff, you know, and it's really unique. And it fits the neighborhood. And I think it has improved the neighborhood, and will continue to do that. And I look forward to his new plans. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard?
Greetings, Council. I'm Rick Fulton, and I'm here in favor of the agreement that you've made with Bucky.
Address, Mr. Fuller.
410 South 82nd Street. So I got to know Bucky through having my car serviced at his 80th and Dodge location. He's a hands-on owner, and we appreciate the service that we get at the 80th and Dodge location. My first home was at 50th and Lafayette, so I'm very familiar with the Dundee area as well. And I don't know all about the ins and outs about the zoning and the agreement, and I see that I have the agreement here that I printed off, and it's like whereas and A, B, C, D, and it's like 10 pages for a 30-yard or whatever it is driveway. I think Steve Buchanan has been a good neighbor to not only to the 80th and Dodge location, but as it seems like to the Dundee area as well. And I urge that the council approve the agreement. Thank you.
Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard?
Larry Storer, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. I've lived there since December of 1971. I've probably traded at 50th and Dodge for at least 30 of those years. Never known of a problem, always a very good, upstanding business operation. And I'm very satisfied with all the work that I have had them do, which is a considerable amount. But as I look at some of this, I guess I'm proponent of all three, four resolutions. However, when this first started coming up, I started questioning myself as, well, who wants to actually do the expansion here? Is it him or is it the city? Because the way these things read, kind of sounds like maybe the city wants to grab that property. Business overlay district, et cetera, and extending whatever it is, improvement zone from Saddle Creek to 50th and maybe further out, beginning to sound like your overall city master plan is a straight corridor all the way to 72nd Street and beyond. So I was very much against, and I was going to vote against you guys, whichever that was. But for the average citizen, it's hard to tell whether you should vote for or against the way this is described. So if you want more civic involvement, we could have Civics 101 if you don't mind. You need to clarify things for the public so they can come down and be accurate at the microphone. So I am all four. But also, the one thing I wanted to point out is if you look in each direction, everything's commercial. Right across the street to their east, it's commercial. People have lived there for years and haven't demanded rezoning for them. Person right behind them, I don't know. A few automobile lights bother them. Is that the problem? But I appreciate getting into the car wash a heck of a lot easier than I did. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponents who wish to be heard?
Hello, City Council. Steve Buchanan, 5001 and 5003 Dodge Street. I just want to say thanks for taking time out and listening to the little ingress-egress problem. And I've been there since I was 19. I bought it, so I've been there 40 years. And would hope to get your support on this. I know it's a new situation for Dundee, but I would hope to get your support that at the end of the day, it enables the customers to get in and out of that car wash easier, and also provides a service for the community that they haven't seen for a while. So if I can get your support, I'd appreciate it. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Jamie Rosales, 103 South 50th Avenue. I'm a resident of Dundee and a taxpayer. I reside at 103 South 50th Avenue, west of Buc-ee's gas station. I've witnessed from the onset this continued force of Buc-ee's to convert this residential property to commercial. Steve came to my home soon after the house at 106 South 50th was demolished and asked me why the neighbors were so upset. He said, "I've known everyone for 17 years. I said, "Steve, you just answered your own question. You've known all the neighbors that long and not even a courtesy to visit and explain what you were doing." Steve got up and stated, "I will leave it green space." In 2009, Buc-ee attempted to pour cement connecting residential to commercial. The property was cited and a stop work order was placed on the property. In October of 2018, cement was poured connecting commercial to residential along with car wash keypads on the residential property. At issue is not upset neighbors or Buc-ee stating that he had bad advice when he poured the driveway. What's at issue is the city's master plan, zoning laws, and permits. I ask the City Council to concur with the City Planning Department in denying Buc-ee's future land use agreement and not retroactively rezoning the land. Do not reward someone for knowingly breaking the city permits and zoning laws and create a divide with the recommendation of the zoning board. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Festerson.
Thanks, Mr. President. As a longtime resident of Dundee, I'm very familiar with this site and familiar with its history and the background that was provided by all speakers. It is a business that residents like to patronize, and it is a good business that has a nice history in Omaha and has been very successful. There is also, though, angst from the neighborhood about the issues discussed over a long period of time about commercial and neighborhood uses of property and trying to have those coexist together. And how we got here is a pretty unusual situation that's been acknowledged with a driveway that was built without a permit. I would also say I'm very familiar with this site because my wife seems to have a talent running over nails. So we've been there frequently to get that repaired, and they always do a great job. So what I'm trying to do when I look at this case is figure out a practical solution to what's been a long-term problem between the neighborhood and the business in terms of zoning and property use, but wanting to coexist and be good neighbors to each other and wanting to patronize each other. And to me, one thing that's appealing about what we have before us today is this development agreement that is item number 10. I think without the development agreement, the rest of these items would not be even considered, but the development agreement is appealing to me for a few reasons, one of which is I think it is a practical solution to the problem we have before us here today. It would resolve, I think, some long-term anxieties about the neighborhood, about what the station could become someday, whether it's owned by Buc-ee's or not, because what it would do is a few things. One is ensure that the driveway that has been installed is only used for that purpose and no other purpose for ingress and ingress. It also ensures that the property could not be redeveloped with anything potentially more obtrusive to the immediate neighbors right there. And that would stick with the property, not just the current property owner going forward. So I think resolve that in a long-term fashion. And then secondly, or thirdly, it would require some improvements that aren't currently there to happen immediately, which are replacement of a fence that needs to be replaced to provide greater shielding to the surrounding neighbors and for aesthetics. And then also a substantial landscaping plan that was shown on our screen here that I think would also benefit that corner and be consistent with the ACI we hope to see in this area. So those things to me are appealing. This might be a question here for Mr. Fansler, or maybe Ms. Glenn. The applicant also intends to do some renovations to the current property that would not and could not involve altering the current structures, but presumably would involve improving the facades and the appearance of the current buildings. To do that, as has been acknowledged, that plan, I believe, has to go to the Urban Design Review Board. Is that correct? Ms. Glenn, you can answer it.
Yes, that's correct. They've already begun those, I guess, discussions with the board with respect to different materials that have been proposed as part of the plan.
And what's the timeline for that, should this be approved today?
The timeline is, yeah, as Mr. Buchanan just mentioned, they're working on it as fast as they can. And so there's no plan to delay that construction from happening.
And is that an item that has to come back to the City Council or just the Urban Design Review Board?
My understanding is just the Urban Design Review Board.
Okay. Well, that is why they're there, and I think that would be something they'd be interested in too, in terms of improving the appearance of the site and its historic nature, and certainly I think they recognize the importance of the intersection of 50th and Dodge to the neighborhood and to our city. And then lastly, the thing I found convincing about this solution is that there isn't a good remedy here without it. If none of these things are approved today, the end result is the driveway needs to be taken out at a great cost to the current owner, probably $20,000 or $30,000, I'm told. It would not be reestablished. There would still be a problem with the current car wash for residents and patrons of the business. There would not be improvements to the landscaping or the fencing, and we'd be back to square zero, or square one maybe, on the long-term issue between how to resolve this successful business with also a successful neighborhood. So all those things in consideration, I think this is not an ideal situation, but we do have a practical solution by which to get it resolved. And to me, that it's approving item number 10, the development agreement, that then allows for the rezonings to happen after it. So those need to be separate votes, and I'm sure there's more questions and more comments here from council members, but realizing that item 10 is important to consideration of the rest of the items, I want to go ahead and move item 10 to the floor for approval.
Second. Mr. Jerem.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. And I too appreciate the discussion that Mr. Buchanan and his representatives have had since this situation was discovered. This is in my district, and one of the things that I've learned through the course of the redevelopment along and near Dodge in the Dodge Street corridor since 2009, since I've been elected, is that there's a sense of unease and concern whenever there's any proposal, whether it be the residential mixed-use redevelopment or, in this case, an expansion of a commercial area. And the concern is, will there be a encroachment on the integrity of what people know and recognize today as a Dundee, a neighborhood, being the special place that it is, and concern for what roadway this driveway may make into inroads to future development into the neighborhood structure itself and the integrity of that neighborhood as a neighborhood. And so, notwithstanding Mr. Buchanan, who I've known for many, many years, and he's a decent guy, and in the old days of Clancy's, used to see him on Wednesdays when they served New York strip lunches there, going back a couple decades. I am in solidarity and find myself in solidarity with the neighbors who just share their concern that if we do this today on this parcel for commercial on this property, that it's opening the door to something bigger in the future. And so, notwithstanding my thank you for the efforts you've made to address those concerns, I just, at the end of the day, have to vote with the neighbors who are in opposition to what they see as commercial creep into the Dundee neighborhood.
Thank you. There are no more lights. It's been moved and seconded to approve item 10. Oh, I'm sorry. Is your light on? Okay. Mr. Harding.
Thanks, Mr. President. I had a couple of questions about the agreement, and I'm not sure if it's going to be law or maybe Councilman Festerson or maybe even Mr. Fanslaw, but I think the retaining wall that's proposed here, that would still require approvals through Zoning Board of Appeals. I'll ask that of Mr. Fanslaw. Is that correct?
Yeah, Dave Fanslow, City Planning. I don't know exactly what the development agreement says, but I can tell you that the driveway encroaches, if the property is rezoned a GC, the driveway would encroach into the buffer yard that's required by the zoning code between GC and R3.
And again, that would be resolved through at Zoning Board of Appeals?
Correct.
Okay. I guess I'll ask this other question of you while I have you, because I think in paragraph 1E of the development agreement, it does say that all, in part, it says, I'm sorry, let me get back there. Let's see. Any and all zoning code violations, fines, charges, penalties, and assessments related to developers' installation of driveway property without required permits, rezoning matter, and master plan amendment, et cetera, are waived. Typically, if work was done without a permit, aren't there quad fees associated with that?
Yes, that's correct.
Do you know what those would have amounted to in this regard?
I don't know. I can't. I don't know what the total would be.
Okay. Pete, I'll ask Councilman Festerson if he has any knowledge of that. And I guess part of my question is why would those be waived? I'm not sure if that's just a question that's going to float off into cyberspace, because I don't know who to address it to, but you know what, actually, I'll go ahead.
Typically, if an improvement is put in, does not meet the zoning code, state law requires that waiver or that infraction, zoning-wise, would have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I guess you'd have to ask Alan or Paul if this agreement excludes this property owner from going to the Zoning Board of Appeals if this agreement's approved.
Well, I think my question was more along the fines that maybe would have been associated with it, unless I misunderstood what you were saying. So maybe I'll ask Ms. Glenn if she could address this. If not, that's fine. I just had if you can address, I assume you were part of the negotiation of the agreement.
That portion of the agreement, again, this, collectively was an effort between our office and the city attorney's office. Certainly with respect to any fine that would have been imposed on Bucks, if the city council, would like us to pay that, we're certainly willing to do so, notwithstanding that paragraph. But our understanding is that this does not waive our requirement to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for the buffer yard issue that Mr. Fanslow has indicated.
Right, I understand that last part of what you said too. But okay, so now I'll ask Mr. Kratz from law if he has any, or Alan, I guess, Mr. Thielen.
Alan Thielen with the City Law Department.
So I guess my question is, if in part of the negotiation of this agreement, why that language was included in there, if you have any recollection as to why it was included?
And you're talking about the quadruple fees for a missed permit?
That would, I assume that's one of what 1E is in part saying, is the waiving of any penalties or fees. So I'm assuming those would have been the quad fees associated with doing the work without the permit.
I don't think anyone had the intention of including quadruple fees into this waiver in 1E. If that's a concern of the council, you can certainly condition your approval on adding a sentence saying that this section 1E does not waive any quadruple fees that would be assessed under the building code.
Okay, because I guess my thought is that maybe as to use those fees, or maybe an equal amount, maybe to do something additional for the neighborhood might be something that Bucks would consider. I'm not going to make it a part of, I'm not going to make an amendment or add language to the agreement at this point, but maybe what I could do is have Mr. Buchanan or his attorney on the record stating that whatever that amount's equal to, they would be willing to donate that to the neighborhood association or in some neighborhood betterment. Well, we're going to find out what the amount is after, I mean, whatever the amount is. That's an open checkbook then, Mr. Buchanan.
Sure, I was going to say that's a little scary, but Mr. Buchanan has indicated to me that he's certainly, willing to address that issue in the nearby neighboring Dundee community.
So that whatever the quad fees were equal to is the amount, okay. For the record?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, that's all the questions I had on the agreement. Thanks.
Mr. Pauls.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dave, planning?
Yes.
I have a question. As I'm looking through all this info, I see where the planning board and the planning department recommended denial. Succinctly, can you tell me in not paragraphs, but in a couple phrases why that was denied, or why are you recommending a denial?
Sure. Yeah, Dave Fanslow, City Planning. There's a number of reasons, and I will try to be brief. I guess I'd like the council to know that we receive these requests probably dozens of times a year in our when folks come to speak to us about development proposals, rezonings, adjustments of land use maps, stuff like that. Dozens of times a year we have those meetings, and we discourage people from applying for those requests because of the opposition that it will come from the department. That's not to say we always discourage folks from applying. Sometimes it makes sense. In the past, we have straightened out a boundary where the boundary is more defined between residential and commercial. In this case, it creates that uneven boundary between residential and commercial. So that's, I'm just letting you know, we've had dozens of meetings each year and tried to discourage people from doing that. The reason why the planning department, myself and staff recommended denial of this application, it's simply encroachment into a single family residential neighborhood. And our past history, everybody's experience in the department is it can lead to disinvestment in the neighborhood, because if your property is zoned residential and there's an opportunity for the neighboring business to buy your property, that sometimes lead to disinvestment because you can put it on the market and possibly sell it to the adjoining commercial property owner. So it can lead to disinvestment. And I guess I'll speak for the folks, and what we take into consideration is the neighborhood as a whole. So if I bought the house one-off, I would have assumed that house next to me, who's adjacent to the commercial area, would have always stayed. So, to protect those folks and to protect the single-family integrity of the neighborhood, we don't think that bumping in commercial zoning, bumping into single-family residential neighborhood is a good way to go. We also think, and you've heard me say this before, that an action like this could lead to more requests, and we don't think that is a very good thing for the city and the way we should develop. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. That is one reason why I really have taken several looks at this. And I do commend the owner for starting as a 19-year-old at a small gas station, and really, I know, invested in several states. But the thing that really struck me as I was listening, because you're talking about the historical value of this neighborhood. Well, my neighborhood out west is a little bit different. But to us, those of us living out there, we have some historical value. I no longer live in this particular area, but if you go down Center Street, and there are a couple subdivisions out there. One's called Woodhaven. I happen to live in Western Trails, which is right above Woodhaven. On the other side is Armbrust Acres. When I first moved there, there was a little gas station on 160th and Center. And a lot of green grass, a lot of space, beautiful. Sort of went along with the neighborhood. Middle-class neighborhood, not big fancy homes, just nice homes. My area, my historical value. Oh, then all of a sudden, out there, after living there a few years, I saw these block walls go about 2 stories high, block walls, so they could put a gas station out there. Took away the identity of going into a neighborhood with green grass. Now you go out there, you see a wall 2 stories high, a beautiful gas station out there, busy. People love it because of the convenience. But it did take away a little bit from that neighborhood. A smaller gas station, all that green grass, into a nice neighborhood. Now it looks like you're just going into a regular part of town. We lost our identity there. Now, I did not live in Woodhaven, but I lived above it. But every day when I go out on Center Street, I go by this gas station, and I see that the block wall, 2 stories, I'd say 2 stories high. Took away the identity of that neighborhood. So I'm saying is if we start playing around with the inner city, which I really truly love, because having lived at one time in the middle of the town, I think once we start going into the neighborhoods, we're taking away a little bit of that spirit that makes us a little unique. We can build big gas stations anywhere, put block walls up anywhere, but I'm saying let's keep what we have in our neighborhoods, especially in the beautiful part of this neighborhood. I commend for being an unbelievable businessman of doing what he's done, but I tell you, there comes a time when you have to think past the dollar bill. Because I say, I'll drive out tonight, and I'll go past 160th and Center. And no longer will I see that grassy plains. I'll see a nice gas station, very busy, and a lot of wall. So I'm going to listen to what the planning says. Once we start, when does it stop? Now, Dave will tell you that I don't always agree with his master plan. I do harass him a little bit about it occasionally, but I do see that we need to save certain sections of the town. And I just see this as just one little small section that we ought to really think twice about. Because, you know, gas stations, we can put them up. That's doable. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more lights. It's been moved and seconded to approve item 10. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding. Jerem.
No.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 10 is approved, 5-2. Items 11 and 12, a vote can be taken together. This will require 5 votes.
Motion approved.
Second, roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
No.
Melton.
Yes.
Pauls. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 11 and 12 are approved, 5-2. And then item 13.
Motion approved.
Second. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding. Jerem.
No.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 13 is approved, 5-2. Item 14, a resolution to approve the amendment to the Rose on South Hill Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Plan located northeast of 11th and Briggs Streets and southeast of 12th and Briggs Streets with an increase in allocation of TIF in the amount of $652,506 for a new total amount of up to $2,152,506.
Public hearing on agenda item number 14 is today. Proponents, please.
The Council President Gray. If I can get the screen, the light. So before you is an amendment to the Rose on South Hill. The Rose on South Hill was first presented to the council back in 2015 when it was approved, and the developer is also here if you have to answer questions as well. They have been involved in redevelopment in this area since at least 2015. And this is the project that began this redevelopment. It involved originally 36 townhomes. And this particular project was one of the first for-sale row house condo type TIF development projects since the recession, since the middle of 2000. So it was kind of risky to come into this area and redevelop and add for-sale housing, but that is what this developer has done, is added 36. At least 26 are completed and occupied, and this last row there's construction ongoing and maybe one or two that are sold. As the developer has been in this area redeveloping, they've purchased other properties and found an opportunity to expand the project. And the expansion is right here, which is about 12th and Briggs Street, which you see highlighted in yellow. And the opportunity is that they are able to add 6 more similar row houses, 2 beds, 2 baths, which the original 36 had about 2 beds, 2 baths, and it does include 2 car garages. The increase in the amount of TIF is $652,506. It was originally at 1.5, so they've increased it, and now the total TIF for the entire project is $2,152,506. The TIF eligible expenses are the basic ones for this, and that's acquisition, public improvements, site work, architectural engineering, and some studies. I will step aside and let the developer answer any other questions. But again, I just want to let you know this is an expansion of a continued expansion of a project that involved adding home ownership into a neighborhood, so it continues redevelopment, infill redevelopment. And the TIF committee, of course, has given their approval, and the planning department is also given, or planning board has given their approval. I did have, this is just kind of the site layout of the original 36 here, and then this is the site layout of the new 6. And then I have some preliminary renderings of the north, west, south, and the east elevation for the new 6. Similar in construction and or rather in design of the original 36. The urban design team for the planning board has given approval to the new 6. So with that, I would ask for your approval.
The proponents who wish to be heard.
Good afternoon. Tom McClay, 3814 Farnham Street, here with Mike Peter as well on behalf of the development team. Happy to answer any questions. We're excited to continue to expand home ownership in the city of Omaha. We've had a very big increase in rental ownership, a lot of what we've done ourselves. This is actually creating a new product, a new thing for, not new, but but not as much homeowner development in the city has occurred really over the last 50 years to pragmatically. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Jerem.
Yes, this project has received a number of communications in support to my office and to the clerk, and I can forward those that I received, but I just have to share kind of a couple interesting anecdotes about this neighborhood and this site. In the elections that I've had, I've knocked a lot of doors and gone to different neighborhoods, and this particular site was one scary house that when you purchased it, the first thing you did, I suspect because you saw what I saw, is you tore it down. You want to share the story about what was going on in that house? There were devil worshippers there. Real life, 2018 people who were like some kind of cult in this location. It was, I mean, I've seen Rottweilers chase me, walking door to doors. I've seen a guy with a pistol saying to get off his porch. He didn't welcome unsolicitors. But that was up there with the scariest. And what you're doing to change this property is, at this location, I call it Sunset Ridge because what's to the left. And the neighbors who were to the south of this property, who look to the west and overlook not only down onto 13th, but over the ridge to the west, they have beautiful vistas there, including to the north to the downtown. The site is, I'm sure, going to be highly desirable when you build this out to people looking to own homes. But I couldn't resist sharing that story about how horrible this. I think I don't even know if it was a squatter or what the heck was going on in there, but the neighbors were as scared of this place as I was when they took me up there to make sure I didn't miss it. So thank you for tearing that place down.
You're welcome.
And thank you for what you're doing.
Thanks.
And there's a lot of people in the area, I hope you know, who are with you, that support what you're doing.
We've really seen a lot of support from folks. I know you received some emails. There's some emails that Bridget received. There's a lot of rejuvenation going on that 13th Street area now. 10th Street's seen our projects and some others. That activity of downtown is starting to migrate south. It's taken a while. I found my first duplex almost 13 years ago on 10th Street that I've continued to own because I just thought it was such a neat, exciting area that had future development potential. But it has taken quite a long time. As Bridget mentioned, the recession hit. That really stalled things in 2008. Everything stopped. But with the Central Park Mall rejuvenation, the riverfront rejuvenation, I really think there's some momentum that can come back downtown and start to spill south.
Thank you. Are there any other? Well, I think we closed the public hearing. Is there a motion?
It's public hearing. Motion approved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve item 14. There are no further lights. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 14 is approved, 7-0. Item 15, a resolution to approve the 49 Place Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Plan located at 209 South 49th Street in an amount up to $883,105 is the minimum of the whole requested by the Planning Department.
Public hearing on agenda item number 15 is today. Proponents, please.
Yes, good afternoon. Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning. This TIF project plan involves new construction of 9 row homes kind of in the Dundee area on a long vacant site at 49th and Farnham. The 9 row homes are new construction, market rate for sale units. There'll be 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath units, each with a 2-car garage, so all parking will be on site. Really, the design is fairly nice with this project. All the units are accessed with their garages are accessed from the rear, the east side of the site, with a single curb cut on Douglas, which allows then to have a front of the building without a lot of garage doors. You have more green space, less traffic conflicts, really kind of nice streamlined design, ample room for landscaping. The developer is Design Development LLC, Tim Holland, manager. He's also done a fairly nice job, I think, with neighborhood engagement on this project. Total project cost is $5,055,059. The TIF support being requested is $883,105. This project meets the criteria of the city's TIF program. It's an appropriate land use for this location, and it complies with the goals of the city's master plan. We ask for your approval.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tim Holland, 119 South 49th Street, and I'm here to answer any questions that you have. This has been a vacant lot since we purchased the former Bethel Synagogue, I think now 23 years ago. So this is an idea, a concept that we had just before the recession hit, and we're just bringing it back to life and look forward to moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard?
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska, 68132. I didn't want to stay for all the other TIF things, so I'll make my comments on this one. That I'm opposed. I'm opposed because by using some of the same arguments, here's some buildings that are going to remove some of the scenery from around those folks that live there now, block some of the skyway. And have you not driven down Saddle Creek lately? Some of the high-rise mixed-use development that's going up above Walmart has certainly restricted the view from people from across the street, and blocks my view, my enjoyment of what I used to be able to see driving down Saddle Creek. Those things are going up all over town. Exarban, the green space, and the sky views are all gone from Exarban now. So why is that not allowed for other people, such as 49th and 50th and Dodge? I mean, existing properties. Here's a small guy wanting a small piece of property, a waiver for that driveway. It's okay to give away all this TIF money and defray the costs of businesses putting up all these things, but it's not okay to grant him a waiver. I was going to vote against those other things earlier, but the story was the mayor had this agreement and it was going to pass. So I voted for all because you only let us consider all of them at one time. So thank you, but if you're going to be fair, be fair. You tore down some residential apartments on Dodge Street there before 50th to put in a new theater complex for who? The Buffett Foundation, right? But the little guy, catty corner from across there, can't have an expanded driveway? Come on. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents who wish to be heard?
Luis Jimenez, 518 North 40th Street. I'd like to say that on this TIF, I'm not familiar with all the particulars. Some questions came up, and you guys do a good job on covering the particulars on some of the TIF issues, applications. I didn't catch if or how much the per unit cost was. If this is rental. I was thinking, well, two-car garage, that's not going to do with affordable housing. So that was my question on that point. If you guys want to cover that, whoever has that information. Also, I wanted to get deeper into this information, but when I clicked on the link, your connection is not private, cityclerk.cityomaha.org, so I apologize for not having access to that. I'm not sure what's going on there. Mr. Storr spoke about the view. I've talked to folks in that area about development, and not all of it is with the TIF, with TIF financing, but there's definitely disappointment, Mr. Durham, on your part that you're not worried about the view and the changing, I guess, landscape. UNMC is benefiting a lot, and I'm wondering if they're not being bullies with their designs or their ideas, I mean. Anyway, if you can answer that, because I don't think this is affordable housing. I don't think that's an appropriate label for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed.
Motion to approve this residential project in this residential district for owner-occupied for sale housing.
Second.
Hope that answered your questions.
Is this the amendment of the whole?
Yes.
Includes the amendment of the whole. No further lights, roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 16, an application to consider a Class I liquor license for Lakeside Village located at 17475 Francis Street. A's Communication opposition.
Public hearing on agenda item number 16 is today. Proponents, please.
Michael Sands, 1700 Farnham Street, Suite 1500. I'm here on behalf of Emmanuel. There's some representatives from Emmanuel behind me as well, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Moved and seconded to approve item 16. No lights, roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 16 is approved 7-0. Item 17, an application to consider a Class K liquor license for Therapy Bar and Grill located at 5059 South 108th Street.
Public hearing on agenda item number 17 is today. Proponents, please.
Hello, I'm Amy Weir with Therapy Bar and Grill, 5059 South 108th Street.
Thank you. Any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Pauls.
Thank you, Mr. President. How's therapy doing?
Great, great.
I haven't been there for a while, so any new exciting
You
thing?
need some hair. You need some therapy.
You're not
Yes,
broken.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
No. Okay. So move.
Moved and seconded to approve item 17. Seriously approve item 17. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 17 is approved 7-0.
Stop in and see.
Item 18, a resolution to consider a reconstruction application for Bucky's Express 96 for their Class D liquor license located at 9645 Ida Street.
Public hearing on agenda item number 18 is today. Proponents, please.
Hello, it's Robert Deasing, 1005 East Aberdeen Drive, Papillion, Nebraska, representing Bucks Inc.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Moved and seconded to approve item 18. No lights, roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 18 is approved 7-0. Item 19, an application to consider a special designated liquor license for Maloney's Irish Pub located at 1830 North 72nd Street for an outdoor area for St. Patrick's Day events on Saturday, March 16th, 2019 from 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. and Sunday, March 17th, 2019 from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. with music until 1 a.m. each night.
Public hearing on agenda item number 19 is today. Proponents, please.
Hi, Wendy Maloney Bettine, 1830 North 72nd Street.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Moved and seconded to approve item 19. No lights, roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 19 is approved 7-0.
Thank you.
Consent agenda. Any member of the city council may cause any item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be taken up by the city council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed, unless otherwise provided by the city council rules of order.
Public hearing on agenda items numbers 20 through 29 were held on February 26, 2019. We are going to take item number 21 off of consent, so the motion would be for items 20, 22 to 29.
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
Motion to waive number 21 for 1 month. Continue public hearing.
Second. Roll call.
And this would be to the April 2nd meeting.
April 2nd meeting.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
The public hearing on agenda items numbers 30 to 35 are today. If you wish to address the city council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item number you wish to address, identify yourself by your name, address, who you represent, and if you are a proponent or an opponent. Seeing none, public hearing is closed. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. Nicholas Strawhecker, 11809 Francis Street, for item 30 for chef owner of Dante and Dante Pizzeria Napolitana.
Thank you. It's on consent, though, so we'll probably be voting it all up at the same time.
Ah, sorry.
Okay? Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded to approve items 30 through 35. There are no further lights. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 30 through 35 are approved 7-0. Item 36, a resolution to approve a settlement agreement in the amount of $150,000 for the pending lawsuit of James J. Nuno versus City of Omaha and Mark R. Jordy.
Public hearing agenda item number 36 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded to approve item 36. No lights. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 36 is approved 7-0. Item 37, an ordinance declaring the necessity of acquiring for use by the City of Omaha private property for the Signal Infrastructure Phase A project.
Public hearing agenda item number 37 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 38, an ordinance approving a redevelopment and tax increment financing redevelopment agreement with Ashton LLC to implement the Ashton Building Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Plan located at 1218 Nicholas Street in an amount up to $6,350,000.
Public hearing agenda item number 38 is today. Proponents, please.
Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard?
Kendra Ringenberg, 9500 West Dodge Road, Suite 100. I'm just here on behalf of the developer if you have any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 39, an ordinance approving a redevelopment tax increment financing redevelopment agreement with Victory Apartments 2 Omaha LLC to implement the Victory Apartments 2 tax increment financing redevelopment project plan located at 819 Dorcas Street in an amount up to $347,016.
Public hearing agenda item number 39 is today. Proponents, please.
Bridget Hadley, City Planning, here to answer questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard?
Zach Reinhardt, Burlington Capital, 1004 Farnham Street, Suite 400. This is a project that we've been working on for the last couple of years. Add 60 units of quality affordable housing for our veterans. Just kind of continues the work that Burlington Capital has been doing to provide quality affordable housing in our community, and just ask for your support in this. Here to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard?
Luis Jimenez, 518 North 40th Street. Council members, as you know, I look at your agenda, and lately I've been seeing these TIF projects throughout the agenda. At the beginning, you know, you could vote a TIF. With this other early agenda item, you got a TIF section, and then later on you have TIF resolutions, TIF ordinances, and I'm here on this project, and it's for veterans, for affordable housing. That's encouraging, I suppose. There's more than veterans here in Omaha that need affordable housing. The cost to live here in Omaha has increased throughout the years, and the Omaha World Herald yesterday or a couple days ago came out with an article that talks about that. And if the TIF is an apparatus for Omaha that's given by the state, and that's going automatic, and as you know, you guys want to do something that will spark good development. Affordable housing is one of them, and just passing TIFs throughout your agenda, whether they're a few years old, projects that are a few years old or not, isn't going to solve it, I don't think, for affordable housing. The projects that the TIF are given to are varied, and for my last comment, I just want to say that the TIF, I'm still convinced that the CRA map is not conducive to the redevelopment here. I am convinced you should have these holes or pockets or islands is the buzzword around here. That's how this map, especially in your district, Mr. Durham, and you know that the CRA doesn't deal with blighted areas. That word is defined in the ordinance, I mean in the statute. It's that definition of a blighted area is different than what you would find in a dictionary. I just want to make that point because I'm convinced that there should be holes in that map. Thank you.
Thank you.
The CRA map.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents who wish to be heard?
Councilors, I don't want to speak in opposition to this specific project, but I just want to say that I think Mr.
Name and
Jimenez,
address, Mark.
Mark Von Drossik, 211 South 37th Street. Thank you. I think Mr. Jimenez is right in his pointing out that while this particular project is valuable, of course, for housing veterans, that we hear a lot from developers that the return on investment for large-scale, low-income apartments is simply not feasible. I think it's interesting that we are able to find that money when it comes to making housing for veterans, and I think there's something of an anomaly in that occurrence, and I would just like to encourage the council to seek out more large-scale, low-income apartments to use tax increment financing for. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing that public hearing is closed, next item. I'm sorry. Is there a light? Oh, Mr. Festus.
Thanks, Mr. President. I agree that affordable housing is, of course, a need throughout the community, but I do want to thank the developers on this particular project. It is a significant step forward for veterans home housing in our community. Mr. Reinhardt and Mr. Acola, and I think Mr. McClay, even before them, at Burlington Capital for this work. Phase one, of course, was complete, 90 units. We were talking about it just last week, and as I understand it, it's fully occupied, and there's even a waiting list of up to 100 veterans at certain points. So once phase two here gets established, another 60 units, we hopefully will come close to clearing that waiting list and getting folks placed in housing that they desperately need. And I think that Omaha has made great strides, particularly when it comes to veterans housing and veterans homelessness in the community, and no small part to what you're doing here too. Maybe just one question for you, Mr. Reinhardt. Can you tell us what the unit cost would be or rental would cost for a veteran going forward?
So Zach Reinhardt, Burlington Capital, 1004 Farnham Street. So we've got vouchers, HUD VASH vouchers on this property that will cover a portion of the rental cost. For some tenants, it's the entire rental cost. But on this project specifically, we're in that mid 500 range per unit per month. So not even close to market rate. When we start talking about affordable housing and we talk about TIF for affordable housing, I'm of the belief that this is the kind of project that TIF is sort of a no-brainer for. We're building housing that we're not talking about people who are coming out of other housing and just looking for a better place to live. We're talking about veterans who were formerly homeless, who formerly did not have a home, and now have a quality, safe, affordable place to live. So yeah, we're looking at the $530 to $560 a month.
Great, thank you. We appreciate you doing this project, and it is a great repurposing also of a current building. I know it's in Councilman Palermo's district. I see his lights on, so I'm going to let him talk next, but I know he's proud to have it too. And I look forward to supporting this next week.
Thank you. Mr. Palermo.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I just wanted to say, I know this particular item has 60 units, and I'm sure that you could build many, many more, and they would be filled up just as quickly. So I just kind of wanted to end it on, when you talk about affordable housing and you talk about veteran living, I have a lot more affordable dirt for you. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more lights. Next item.
A public hearing for items 40 and 41 can be held together. Item 40, an ordinance providing for the designation of an enhanced employment area, the levy of a general business occupation tax for the Logan Building. Item 41, an ordinance approving a redevelopment tax increment financing redevelopment and occupation tax agreement with Logan Hospitality and MTC LLC to implement the Logan Building tax increment financing redevelopment project plan located at 1802 Dodge Street in amount up to $2,776,500 and $1,375,000 in occupation tax.
Public hearing on agenda items numbers 40 and 41 are today. Proponents, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. Kevin Anderson, Deputy Chief of Staff in the Mayor's Office, here on behalf of the EEA Committee for support of the project. As mentioned, $1.375 million of enhanced employment area occupation tax to support a nearly $21 million redevelopment of the Logan Building at 18th and Dodge, a historic building with an interesting story to tell, and provides a really good investment of a property that sat vacant for upwards of 20 years now. And really excited to see the level of investment that's going into the property to develop as a boutique hotel with retail component and upper story of condominium residential. The tax structure as proposed would place a 3.0% occupation tax on hotel sales, retail sales, 3% on hotel stays, and a proposed 7% occupation tax on parking associated with hotel uses. So it's largely assumed that out-of-town guests would be bearing the brunt of the additional taxation associated with the occupation tax, resulting in the creation of 35 to 50 full-time equivalent jobs, meeting the thresholds established by state statute, and personally I think is a good utilization of EEA occupation tax dollars in collaboration with other incentives to provide a capital stack that makes this very important, very difficult project happen. So that said, I'll make myself available for any questions, but I do know that the development team is here today. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard?
Michael Sands, 1700 Farnham Street, Suite 1500. Here on behalf of the developer. Just wanted to give a little bit of background because I know there might be some questions pertaining to this one. And a lot of you know this, but so like Kevin said, the building's been vacant for 20 plus years, and that hasn't been for lack of trying. My law firm has engaged in at least 2 efforts to repurpose the building. I know of at least 4 others, and all of them have come up short because simply it just didn't pencil out on paper. And so what Mike and the development team is doing and trying to do is no small feat. And that's mainly because I know I talked to President Gray about he's been in that building. It's in really bad shape. I mean, it's on the National Register of Historic Landmarks. So it's an old, beautiful building, but the inside is like a war zone in there. So what that does is it makes it cost prohibitive to try to do that redevelopment while preserving that historical value. It makes it really, really expensive, and that's why those prior projects haven't really penciled out. And with this one, you know, the financing mechanisms used are the reason why this one is set to work and why it's gotten this far, and quite frankly, further than any of the other projects have gotten. And I won't get into the numbers too much, but you know, the capital stack consists of EEA, TIF, historic tax credits, over 25% or close to 25% of owner's equity, which is quite a large number, close to $5 million, and then an over almost $11 million construction loan. It consists of PACE as well, but altogether the project's around $21 million. That for a project of this relative size that is very expensive, and that being said, the risk is so great and the costs are so high that the capital stack and these items that are here before you today are a bit like a game of Jenga, where if you pull one out, the whole thing can come tumbling down, and that's kind of what's happened in the past. So respectfully, we ask for your approval on these items. We think it'll be a great addition to the city and revive a once great building into a great building once again. Thank you. And
Thank you.
I'm here to answer any questions, and Mike Works is here as well.
Thank you. Any other proponents who wish to be heard?
Hi, Mike Works, 6007 Norman Road, Lincoln, Nebraska. Thanks for considering our new plan for the Logan building. Obviously, it's been sitting there a long time. It's only by great work by the city and all the different incentives that we do have in place here that this thing makes sense at all. And as Michael said, a lot of people have tried this, including some people that we've known, and it just didn't pencil out with anything else, including apartments, which was the most recent thing, because the EEA really didn't affect apartments in the way it does a hotel, and the hotel can take advantage of that in a different way. So thank you. We hope you'll support it, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 42, an ordinance to approve the collective bargaining agreement for the Functional Employees Group for 2018 through 2021.
Public hearing agenda item number 42 is today. Proponents, please.
Good morning, or good afternoon. Tim Young, City Human Resources Director. Mike Maxson, the president of the functional group, was here. He had to leave, so he made me promise to tell you that he thoroughly enjoyed the negotiating process, and he wanted me to thank the council for your time. So with that, I mentioned earlier this morning that this contract is essentially the same contract as Local 251 with a couple of differences. So I'll just highlight those differences for you, and then I'll be available to answer any questions that you want. For 251, there was a 3-year contract with the functional group. This is a 4-year contract. And if you remember with the 251 contract, what we did is we gave everyone a 3% increase across the board, and we were able to negotiate 21 different positions, some higher than 3%, some less than 3%. With the functional group, everyone is 3% across the board, with the exception of the 4th year of this contract, and that's 2%. Keep in mind that the functional group is also a very small bargaining group. I think at last count there were 23 strong. And then the other main issue was the retro pay. There is the retro pay for the 251 group started March 1st following the expiration of their contract, whereas the functional group goes all the way back to the expiration of, essentially they don't have a contract. So what they wanted was a standalone contract, and now they have that. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Festerson.
Thanks, Mr. President. Mr. Young, just a couple questions for you. So in essence, no pension changes, but moving to a high deductible health care plan consistent with other civilian bargaining units, right?
Correct. The same plan is going forward, you know, one city, one plan. Hopefully we'll get there. They will transition to the high deductible plan in January of 2020, and there are no pension reform. However, similar to 251, what we did is reserved the right for both parties to go back to the table and reopen pension should conditions change drastically.
Okay. And I realize this is only a bargaining unit of 23 people, but I do like to ask this question of every contract that comes before us, particularly because this one includes back wages to 2018, that all expenses as a result of this negotiation are covered in our current budget situation, budget year.
That is correct.
Okay. And then can you expand upon a little bit the significance of this being the first time they've had their own contract? What's the significance of that from your perspective?
Well, when I started with the city, I started in the middle of contract negotiations, so I hate to do this, but I know that Mr. Endenbosch is sitting in the back. He was actually negotiating this contract before I even got to the city. I know that they were subject to just the provisions in the city code. The former leadership desired a standalone contract, so we started the process of getting them there. They were represented by the Teamsters, and over the course of probably several years, they decided to sever their relationship with the Teamsters and just negotiate amongst themselves, and we were able to get the contract accomplished in 3 meetings or less.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Palermo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Young, sorry.
Sure.
Did the president who left happen to leave you with any data on the bargaining unit, on the vote, and how it fared? Or could you guess on that?
He did not. He said that it was overwhelmingly positive. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more lights. Next item.
Item 43, an ordinance to amend Omaha Municipal Code, Section 44-151, to adopt the 2017 National Electrical Code.
Public hearing agenda item number 43 is today. Proponents, please.
Anna Busboyazny with the Planning Department. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard?
Good afternoon. Dan Hughes, IBEW Local 22, 8946 L Street. We're in favor of, by our understanding, this is just to update the electrical code from the 2014 code to the 2017 code, as long as there's no other changes to Section 44 in the municipal code. So there's standards in there that go above and beyond the NEC. So if that's all it's doing is just updating from 2014 to 2017, we're in favor of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item. I'm sorry. Mr. Festus.
Thanks, Mr. President. So, Anna, could you just respond to that question? I think that's accurate to say that there's no other impacts to the section that Mr. Hughes
That's
described.
accurate. We're just adopting the 2017 without any amendments.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you. No more lights. Next item.
Item 44, an ordinance to amend Omaha Municipal Code, various sections of Chapter 40 to adopt the 2012 Mechanical Code.
Public hearing agenda item number 44 is today. Proponents, please.
Anna Busboyazny with the Planning Department. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Pauls.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll refer back to 43 and 44. If I'm in the business world, I will not see any change in the regulations, significant changes that would affect me.
What we're trying to do is be consistent with what the state is enforcing at this present time. And so over and above that, I would not see any formative changes. There's been several things that have come before the Building Board of Review with regards to ventilation of parking garages and type 1 or type 2 grease hoods or grease ducts. And so we're trying to eliminate some of those people having to come before the Building Board of Review. So there is some language to make that a little bit easier to contend with.
But if I'm in the business world watching this, I have nothing to fear of additional regulations, is what you're saying. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. No more lights. Next item.
Item 45, an ordinance to approve an agreement with the Board of Regents of the University of Nebraska to make a partial payment toward the city's unfunded reimbursement in the amount of $1,561,000.
Public hearing agenda item number 45 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 46, an ordinance approving the 16th supplemental agreement with Douglas County and the Omaha Douglas Public Building Commission to provide for the issuance of up to $6,250,000 of new bonds to pay costs for acquiring the MUD site located between 17th Street, 18th Street, Harney Street, and Howard Street for future projects.
Public hearing agenda item number 46 is today. Proponents, please.
Mr. President, members of the City Council, Paul Cohen, Administrator, Omaha Douglas Public Building Commission, here to answer any questions that you may have on this proposal.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing,
Luis Jimenez, 518 North 40th Street. Council members, this is one item I do want to speak on out of all of them. And as you know, there's a partnership that you guys have to approve and the Douglas County Board has to approve. They approved this last week, I think, to acquire the MUD building and the property. They're not going to use, the county, the plan is not to use the building. It's going to be all new construction on that block. And that's why they want to get this for their for the Douglas County Justice Reform. That's their plan. It has to do with the most pressing issue, which is to provide juvenile judges that preside over items, criminal items, because not all of it is criminal, for juveniles. They want to get room for the county, the defense, the public defender's office, the Douglas County Attorney, legal services programs. It's known as the Justice Tower or the Justice Center. That's one piece. And then they have also the juvenile detention center component that becomes controversial because it's relocation. This idea wants to put juvenile detention to downtown. However, this item, you're not going to see anything about juvenile detention because they took out all the resolutions, or language off the resolutions. So they don't talk about juvenile detention. The nonprofit, though, that the county has identified to help with the development, I'll say help for sake of discussion. Their idea or their plan, their model, their design already has juvenile detention in downtown on this block. No buildings right now, but that's where they want to put juvenile detention. I don't think that's off subject to encourage you guys, this council, to be cognizant of the intentions and prior intentions as well of the relevant individuals putting together this idea, because the public feels indignant at the same time that the commissioners feel indignant about how this development is panning through. And that's an unfortunate situation. I don't feel that the commissioners should be indignant when the public provides opposition to relocate juvenile detention to downtown when the most pressing issue on this is the Justice Tower. And I've already lined it, hopefully, up accurately of what the Justice Tower entails. They already, yesterday, they already have property for that. But because what they thought would fall into place, arrangements that would fall into place, that didn't happen. Now they want this property, which is pretty nice. There's a courtyard There's the MUD building, which is historical, but there's no historical designation. There's an agreement that there's not going to be demolished for 50 years. 50 years, but that's not what they want. The 5 members on the Board of Commissioners, they don't want the MUD building. They want the space to fit their idea of the Justice Tower being connected with juvenile detention. And they said it's very convenient because it's connected. I don't see how that's not seen as a pipeline, as a school-to-prison pipeline. But I think it is, especially when it's so convenient to move juvenile offenders to the judges. And we're told they're not going to be shackled because of that. The commissioners wants us to believe that juveniles are not going to be shackled because of that model, of that design. But the fact is, it's the sheriff, the county sheriff, that decides if juvenile offenders are going to be shackled. The commissioners can't guarantee that to the public. So they kind of talked about it, kind of danced around it. But the truth is, even if they wanted to, they couldn't force the sheriff not to shackle juvenile offenders. And they have a little arrow there between the 2 buildings. I don't think that's a traumatic experience for a juvenile to be shackled, but I digress. In summary, because they've taken all language out to do with juvenile detention on this, it's early, still early, it's been early for so long, and that the nonprofit already has a design with juvenile detention down here. I want you guys to be
Mr. Menace, I'm gonna have to get you
cognizant
to wrap
of
it
the
up
individuals.
here real
That-
quick,
I am doing that. I said in summary.
Oh, yeah, but you're kind of getting far afield here now.
Okay,
so just
there's
wrap
a
it
lot,
up,
a lot
okay?
to cover, and I'm done. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 47, an ordinance authorizing and providing for the issuance of redevelopment project revenue bonds for the Blackstone Hotel in the amount not to exceed $22,627,138 for improvements within the Blackstone Hotel tax increment financing redevelopment project plan area.
Public hearing agenda item number 47 is today. Proponents, please.
Good morning, good afternoon, sorry. Tom McClay, 3814 Farnham Street here in Omaha. I was here before you last week. Mr. Councilman Harding's invitation, we spoke a little bit about what the process we're using to do this conduit bond issuance. I'm happy to answer any more questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed.
Non-action items, items 48 through 62 do not require public hearing or city council consideration at this meeting, but will be placed on a future agenda for public hearing and/or vote. The reason for non-action is noted after the item on the agenda, as well as the date the item is expected to appear on the agenda for consideration.
Jinxed us. Motion adjourned.
Second roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Meeting is adjourned at 3:57.